Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Frel, your professor. Our topic this morning is on common offenses, particularly with crimes against persons. So what are these crimes against persons? This consists of acts which take human life, or those which merely inflict injuries, and the third added by the amendments to the rape law is sexual crimes. So here are the crimes covered under those crimes against persons. 1 is parricide, 2 murder, 3 homicide, 4 death caused by tumultuous affray or fight, 6 physical injuries inflicted in tumultuous affray, giving assistance of firearms, discharge of firearms, infanticide, intentional abortion, unintentional abortion practiced by herself or her parents, abortion practiced by a physician or midwife in dispensing of abortive. Next, duel. We have also challenging to duel, mutilation, serious physical injuries, administering injurious substance beverages, less serious physical injuries, slight physical injuries and maltreatment, and rape. Now, class, between killing and inflicting injuries, the difference lies in the presence or absence of the intent to kill. So it is relevant only when the victim did not die. Because if the victim died, the intent to kill is presumed for death. Is its best evidence, and criminal intent is presumed from the voluntary commission of an unlawful act. So remember, class, that the intent to kill is only relevant if the victim did not die. However, if the victim died, the death of the person is the best evidence and of the intent to kill. Now let's discuss some of these crimes covered under crimes against persons. Let's start with parricide. Parricide is from the Latin word parricida, or killer of parents or another close relative. It is defined as the act of killing one's father, or less commonly one's mother, or some other close relative. Now let's have the elements of this crime. One is person is killed. Second is the deceased is killed by the accused. And third, the deceased is the father, mother, or a child, whether legitimate or illegitimate, or other ascendant or descendant, or the legitimate spouse of the accused. So class, based on the relationship of the offender and the offended, the relationship must be 1. Legitimate, except in the case of parent and child, where a relationship may either be legitimate or illegitimate. Second is, must be a direct line or between ascendants and descendants. So there is no parricide in killing of brothers and sisters. This is because the relationship between the brothers and sisters is collateral. Then the third is by blood, except for the spouse. Because there is no parricide in killing adopter by the adopted or vice versa, because relationship is not by blood. The next class is infanticide. This is if the victim is a child, provided less than 3 days old or 72 hours, even if the killer may be the father or the mother, or both are guilty of infanticide. So remember class, in the case of infanticide, concealment of dishonor is extenuating or mitigating only in the mother's case. And please remember also that infanticide is based on the age of the victim, whereas parricide is based on the relationship between the offender and the victim. Now class, if the child is 3 days old or more, the mother is liable for parricide, the brother for murder because parricide requires relationship by direct line. So, to conceal dishonor is not mitigating for both the mother under the law and that of the brother. The next class we have murder. This is if there is the intent to kill. So here are the elements of murder. One is with treachery or taking advantage of superior strength, or with the aid of armed men, or employing means to weaken the defense, or of means or persons to ensure or afford impunity. It is the impunity that is the liberty to do the crime. And number two, if there is the consideration of a prize or a reward or a promise. Third is by means of inundation, of fire, poison, explosion, shipwreck, stranding of vessel, or derailment or assault upon a railroad, fall of an airship, by means of motor vehicles, or with the use of any other means involving great waste and ruin. The number 4 class is, let's say, on occasion of any of calamities such as earthquake, eruption of a volcano, or destructive cyclone, epidemic, or any other public calamity where the killing took place. And number 5 is if there is evidence of premeditation or there is planning about the killing. Then next is with cruelty, killing with cruelty or by deliberately and inhumanly augmenting or strengthening or enhancing the suffering of the victim, or outraging or scoffing at his person or its corpse. So if you have observed class, all the elements of the crime of murder have that intention to kill on the part of the offender. The next is homicide. This is the killing of any person which does not constitute parricide, murder, or infanticide and is not attended by any justifying circumstance. So remember class that there is no frustrated or attempted in homicide through reckless imprudence because intent is inherent in frustrated or attempted felonies or crime. However, class, be reminded that homicide as the killing of one person by another is sometimes considered as a general term that may refer to a non-criminal act as well as criminal act of murder, because there are some homicides which are considered justifiable, such as the killing of a person to prevent the commission of a serious felony or to aid a representative of the law. While murder class is the unlawful killing of another human without justification or valid excuse, especially the killing of another human with malice aforethought. Now, class, the distinction between murder and homicide is the means to kill. Example, the house was burned to kill the victims inside. That is murder only. No? But if in the course thereof other houses were burned, it is submitted that a separate crime of arson for the other houses burned should be filed also. So when two persons are engaged in combat, the killing result therefrom is generally homicide. Now let's distinguish abortion from infanticide. In abortion class, the victim is still a fetus, which is not yet variable. So if destroyed as a fetus and not as a person. But if the fetus had an intrauterine life of less than 7 months and it was destroyed within 24 hours after its complete separation from the womb, this is called still abortion. So when we say intrauterine life class or the prenatal life, that is the interval of life between the conception and the birth of the child. So remember class that if the fetus had an intrauterine life of less than 7 months and was destroyed within 24 hours after its complete separation from the mother's womb, this is still abortion. So there are two kinds of abortion class, the intentional and the unintentional abortion that we will discuss later. And as far as infanticide is concerned, the victim is already viable, and the viability is determined when the cutting of the umbilical cord and the newborn is still alive. So how this intentional and unintentional abortion is being committed? So with intentional abortion, this is committed with the use of any violence upon the person of the pregnant woman, or if without using violence, the offender shall act without the consent of the woman, or if the woman shall have consented on the abortion. While the unintentional abortion is also committed by violence and not by intimidation, and usually this is being committed by strangers or another person, not by the pregnant woman herself. Now next class is physical injuries. This is a formal crime, though in a consummated stage only because it is penalized on the basis of the gravity of the injury. So therefore, it cannot be committed in the attempted or frustrated stage because there will be no basis for the offense. And the gravity of the injury, whether serious, less serious, or slight, will not be known unless and until the felony is consummated. So proof that is beyond reasonable doubt is required for this kind of crime. So how this kind of physical injuries differentiated? We have the slight physical injuries, the less serious physical injuries, and the serious physical injuries. So for the first one, the slight physical injury, this is with less than 9 days of incapacity to work or of medical treatment. For less serious physical injuries, these are those with less than 30 days incapacity from labor, and when attended with ignominy or insult to the victim, or if the victim is any of the following, such as parent, ascendant, guardian, or curator, or those persons in authority, or with those person in authority, it has to have higher degree of penalty. Then next we have Republic Act number 8049 or the Hazing Regulation Act. So violation of this law are mala in se as its penal provision is lifted almost verbatim from Article 263 to Article 266 of the Code on Physical Injuries or under the physical injuries. So hazing or initiation rights is not entirely prohibited, for it may be allowed subject to compliance with, of course, this requirement. One is requirements, no? Prior written notice to the school authorities 7 days before initiation, and it will not exceed 3 days, and the names of subjected activities in that no physical violence be employed by anybody during such initiation rights. Then another is the anti-rape law of 1997. This took effect on October 22, 1997, and it was reclassified as a crime against person. So what are the implications of this law? One is it is now a public crime which prosecuted even without the initiative of the offended party. Second, rape may now be committed even against men. And third, it is now an impossible crime of rape because impossible crimes can only be committed against person and property. And fourth, treachery and cruelty applies. This pertains to aggravating circumstances. When we say aggravating circumstances, these are factors that increases the severity or culpability of a criminal act. So, typically in the presence of an aggravating circumstance, it will lead to a harsher penalty for a convicted criminal. Now let's discuss rape as committed by a man, provided that it shall have a carnal or lascivious knowledge of a woman under any of the following. One is through force, threat, or intimidation. Two is when the offended party is deprived of reason or otherwise unconscious. Third, by means of fraudulent machination or grave abuse of authority. And fourth, when offended party is under 12 or is demented, even though none of the circumstances above is present. And again, class rape is also committed by any person who under any four circumstances on the prior slide shall commit an act of sexual assault by inserting his penis or that of a man into another person's, man or woman, or mouth or anal orifice, or any instrument or object into the genital or anal orifice of another person, whether a man or a woman. But this is of lower penalty, that of which is committed by a man. So, plus what is rape? Rape is when sexual intercourse is non-consensual or it is not agreed upon, or a person forces another person to have sex against their will. It can happen when the victim is intoxicated from alcohol or drugs. Simple rape class is penalized with reclusion perpetua. It is qualified by the presence of the following circumstance. One is with the use of a deadly weapon or by two or more persons. Second, if the victim becomes insane on the occasion or by reason of the rape. Third, if the rape is attempted and a homicide is committed by reason or on the occasion thereof. But then again, class, the relationship of the accused and the victim and minority must be specially pleaded in the information in order to be properly appreciated. So for conviction of qualified rape, the special qualifying circumstance must be accurately alleged in the information and proved beyond reasonable doubt. So every rape done constitute one count. Say one count of rape. So class, if a child is under 7 years old, it is qualified rape. But if a child is 7 years old to 11 years old, it is a statutory rape. And under 18 and incestuous, it qualifies rape. So again, a man who, knowing of a woman's insanity take advantage of her helpless condition is guilty of felonious rape, though he uses no force, nor the woman offers no resistance. So here are the elements of a statutory rape, or those rape which are whose the victim is a child of 7 to 11 years old. 1. If the accused had carnal knowledge of a woman, and 2. That the woman is below 12 years old. So the mere fact of having sexual relation with a girl below 12 years old consummates the offense, and consent is not a defense, since the law presumes that a child below 12 years old cannot give an intelligent consent to the sexual act. So in this case, class, the gravamen or the material or significant part of the grievance is the carnal knowledge of a woman below 12 years old. And in this case, medical examination is not indispensable element, but a mere corroborative in nature. Now let's distinguish rape from seduction or end of qualified seduction. So under rape, the victim is under 12 years old who may or may not be a virgin. But with seduction, the girl must be more than 12 but less than 18, may or may not be a virgin. But for qualified seduction, the girl must be a virgin. We call that moral virginity. And another is for rape, if the child is 12 or over, there is force or intimidation that exists. And for seduction, it has the girl has a good reputation in that the crime is by means of cajolery. When we say cajolery, there is some deception or manipulation or some flattery intended to persuade the girl to do something. And for qualified seduction, it is done with consent but with abuse, such as of abuse of confidence, of authority, or of relationship. So class, please be reminded that when a child is exactly 12 and there is consent, it is neither rape nor seduction, but it is called child abuse. But in the case when the touching of the vagina by the offender's penis is coupled with the intent to penetrate, then it is attempted rape. Otherwise, it is only a mere act of lasciviousness. So now, class, the difference lies on the intent of the perpetrator, deducible from his external acts. And another is inserting a finger on the into the genitals of a woman is rape. That is under the new law. Speaking of object which include finger, no, it must be committed after October 22, 1997, after the passage of the anti-rape law of 1997. Then again, class, rape is also committed when the husband forces his wife to do sexual act without her consent. But valid marriage between the offender and the offended party shall extinguish the action or the penalty imposed, and subsequent forgiveness of the wife as the offended victim shall extinguish also the action or the penalty imposed unless the marriage is void of abdication. That is under the family code on cohabitation. That under the family code, cohabitation means also forgiveness. Then we have now Class Republic Act number 67610, or the Child Abuse Law. So those children who are below 18 years old and unable to take care or protect of themselves from abuse, neglect, cruelty, exploitation, or discrimination because of their age or mental disability or condition. Another is the attempt to commit child prostitution, as under Article 6, Section 2, Paragraph B, or that is if one found alone with a child, not his relative, inside a room or cubicle of a house, in, vessel, or any secluded or hidden area. And 2, receiving services from a child in a sauna parlor or bath, massage, clinic, health club, or similar establishment. So what are the elements of a child abuse? One is the accused commits the act of sexual intercourse or some lascivious conduct. 2, said act is performed with a child exploited in prostitution or subjected to other sexual abuse. 3rd, if the child, whether male or female, is or deemed under 18 years of age. So, a child is deemed exploited in prostitution or subjected to other sexual abuse when done for 1, money or profit or any other consideration. 2, if under the coercion or influence of any adult, a syndicate, or any group. Okay, so that would be all, class, for our discussion this morning. And for your activity, make a case digest on at least 2 of the following. 1 is the case of People of the Philippines versus Guillermo. Number 302 is CR SPRA 257, is CRA or Women Supreme Court Reports Annotated, class, or People of the Philippines versus Romeo J. Alusos, GR number 182875 to 76, November 16, 2001, Inares, Santiago, Ambang. Or number 3, People of the Philippines versus De La Cuesta, number 304, ACRA 88. Okay, class, so please submit your activity in the Google Classroom. Okay, thank you for watching. See you in our next video.